So the one on the right is a little study, and I think it would be quite useful for each of us to do something like this just to warm up. So if you've got your smaller piece of pastel paper handy, you know, a piece about this, well, it's sort of, this one is about a bit bigger than A4, but it doesn't really matter. A4 is fine if that's what you've got. Okay, so this is the study I did earlier on, and what I want you to do is to select 2 pieces of fruit without upsetting your still life. If it's easy, just to, you've got 2 that are on the table, or 1 that's on the table will be fine. Okay, it doesn't matter. Just one piece of fruit to start off with. Now, this was a cooking apple and this is an eating apple. And I don't know what pastels you've got, but I'm going to show you what I've got and the colours I use for this particular study, okay? So, I'll just go out a little bit. So I started off with a piece of white chalk and I drew the shape with white. So it is a good idea to have white. So I'm going to just put a little box of white there just so you can see. I then introduced green. Now I've got 2 greens. I've got a lighter green and I've also got a slightly darker green. Okay, and I also use red. Now, I've got quite a lot of pastels, but if you haven't got pastels a lot, the next colour that I would suggest, the next thing I would have, if nothing else, is a piece of charcoal. Okay. If you've got a dark blue or a dark brown, obviously they create softer mixtures with the other colours. So there's my brown. If you haven't got a dark brown, well, then you haven't got a dark brown. It almost looks like black, doesn't it, on the screen, but in fact it is dark brown. And then I've also got something that's, well, I've actually got a Prussian blue, which is that colour, and that again, probably to you looks almost black, but in fact it's a blue colour. And it's quite useful to have those colours because they enable you to make those 2. They enable you to darken these lighter pastels when you need to in your image or in your practice. So the first thing I would do is just lightly, and I'm going to do it with you. I would get your smaller piece of paper and your white chalk. And I'm going to stick to those colours I had, but I'll leave you to choose the most appropriate ones for your subject. You do need to have, I think, a very light, a medium, a darker one, and a dark, at the very least, if you possibly can. Is that a problem for anybody, or is everybody all right with that?
Fine.
Yeah. Okay, so the next thing I would do is, having got your little swatches, or having got your pastels selected, I would then take one of the pieces of fruit and draw it lightly in outline on your practice paper. So I'm going to do this cooking apple because it's the one that's sitting on the table on its own. And note, it's not, well, most apples are not totally regular. You might think apple shape and then just do a circle, but they're not regular. So be aware of that when you're drawing it. You're not trying to do a regular shape. Okay, now mine is sitting slightly on its side. It's that one at the front, in front of the plate, and it's facing to the left. So the little stalky bit is over on this side of the apple. What that does, I've angled my light so that this side of the apple is actually quite light. So I'm going to just lightly put my white chalk over that area. Just in the area where it's very light, but I'm doing it very lightly. I'm not sort of doing it too heavily at this stage. And the remainder of this apple, I would say, is a much darker tone than that side of the apple because of the way the light is on top of it. Now, this will obviously vary for you according to where your light is in relationship to your apple or piece of fruit or whatever it is that you're drawing. Okay. Now, I could use my Prussian blue over the top of this, and if I just show you, if you just look, if I put the Prussian blue over the top, or you could use your charcoal over the top, then with a piece of paper towel, I then will soften or mix. You can do it with your finger as well, but you end up with filthy, dirty hands if you do. Okay, now this side, which I want much lighter, I'm using the light green. Okay, and already you can see that my apple is in two tones, a light edge, a light part and a much darker part, right? Now, if I want to really increase the darkness of it a bit, I can use some actual red on this edge. You may think that's odd, but it's a complementary colour and it will have the effect of creating a shadow on the back of the fruit. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. All right. I've also got a lovely cast shadow, funnily enough, which is nice. So I might just put that in. So I'm going to use my Prussian blue, but if you have to use black, then use black. I also might use a bit of red with it. Then I get my paper towel and just go around in circles with it on the end of my finger. And there we have a nice cast shadow. Okay. Now, I think this could do with these being even lighter. So I'm going to go back to my white chalk and I might just put a little patches of white over the top of the light green, like so. And then just soften those in. And it has the effect of just bringing up those areas and making them really light. And before I finish, then obviously the little stalky bit in here, I'm going to use my piece of charcoal just to do that, and my red. Okay. Now you could, depending on what pastels you've got, I might, I think this green is not very convincing. I might use a bit of yellow over the top of it, but it's up to you. It depends on the pastels you've got as to what you can mix and what you can't, and it's a case of looking and seeing what is most appropriate. Okay. An ordinary hard rubber is useful to correct things, but it will get very dirty. I mean, this is my little piece of hard rubber, which I keep them just specifically for using with pastels. I wouldn't use it, anywhere else. If you start using a dirty rubber on or a dirty eraser on a piece of watercolor work, and you'll ruin it. So just be aware that it's good to keep a little piece of old rubber for using for pastels. Right. So that's I mean, the one that I did earlier, this one here, is just two of those, and the one I've just done is just obviously just one apple with a bit of cast shadow. So that's the sort of technique you need to establish the dark, which is the dark area of your piece of fruit, which is the light area of your piece of fruit, and build it up, in a simple way to start off with. Clean up anything that doesn't look. I think if we all do one and then you just show it to me, I think that will be useful. That's a bit of practice. And I think also, do like I did on this one, put the colours in that you're using to create that piece of fruit. Okay, make some little squares, and then that can be your little reference sheet. Ooh. Okay. So I had my setup slightly different to what I've got now. It was much more complicated, and I thought about it, and I thought, no, I'm just going to do something really simple in the actual session itself. But just to show you what I was, I sort of did this earlier on. It's a glass plate with all the fruit arranged on it and a couple of pottery jugs on the side. It was done in the daytime, so there weren't any cast shadows, but it's much more interesting working at this time of night with the light, because you do get, you've got the addition of cast shadows as well. So anyway, that was my first butch. And what I'd like you to do is now to make a start on yours. Start with the fruit that's closest to you, and then work your way across the subject. And put in the plate at the end once you've got, or you can put the plate in at the same time, it doesn't really matter, but just be careful about, the thing that was the most difficult in this was the curve of the plate, especially as it was tipped up, okay, because it made this much wider in the front. And also I had to correct the relationship between the edge of the plate and the fruit.